This video is sponsored by Audible. For a free audiobook, use the link in the description below. Welcome to part 11 of the series where I'm tier ranking all 256 types of Twinborn from Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. As always, some of these names come from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, but most of them were created by myself and other users in the Exploring the Cosmere Discord server. Make sure you join the server so you can help come up with Twinborn names for future videos and discuss everything Cosmere. Let's get into this tier ranking. First up, we have Rach. Rach Twinborn can use their allomantic aluminum to wipe the internal allomantic reserves of themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical gold to store health. Allomantic aluminum is nearly useless if that is your only allomantic ability. In some niche circumstances, they could burn their aluminum to get rid of external investiture that's affecting them. I'm gonna have to put Rach in D tier. Next up, we have Transcendent. Transcendent Twinborn can use their allomantic bind alloy to speed up time in a bubble around themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical electrum to store determination. The name Transcendent comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of facing the unknown without hesitation. Okay, so what would a Transcendent be good for? I think they would be pretty good in a combat situation, right? If they ever find themselves in a big brawl with a bunch of enemies, they could throw up their bind alloy speed bubble around themselves and one of their enemies, and then they could isolate that single enemy, and then they wouldn't have to worry about getting ganged up on. I think ferrochemical electrum, as long as you have enough of your determination stored up, tapping that in a combat situation would be very good. It would give you a lot of heart and make you not want to back down from the fight. That could make you more formidable, maybe more intimidating if they realize that nothing that they're doing is deterring you. Overall, I don't think that this is a great combination, but I don't think it's terrible. I'm going to put it in B tier. Next up, we have Statue. Statues can use their allomantic cadmium to slow down time in a bubble around themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical iron to store physical weight. Allomantic cadmium is basically bind alloy's opposite. When the allomancer throws up their cadmium bubble, time to them within the bubble seems normal, but when they're looking at the outside world, outside of the bubble, everything looks like it's moving rapidly. From somebody outside of the bubble looking in, it looks like the allomancer is just sitting there barely moving. So it's not a very useful metal. We see Marasi struggle with that being her allomantic ability in Era 2. She feels like she doesn't know what to use it for until they develop the allomantic grenades eventually. It can be good in some situations if you need the time in the outside world to pass by rapidly. For instance, if you break your leg while you're hiking and you get in touch with rescue services, you could throw up your cadmium bubble and make time outside the bubble pass rapidly. So from your perspective, it would seem like the rescue services got there almost instantly. And then ferrochemical iron is a very good ferrochemical ability. When you're storing your physical weight, you can become light enough so that wind resistance will slow your fall from virtually any height down to the point where you can land safely. And then you can tap that physical weight at a later time, and it will be very hard to move you. You can also add momentum to your punches. We see Sazed do this in Era 1 when he is using one of the hammers on the Khandra. Every time he's swinging down, he adds weight to his blow. Overall, I don't think this is a good combination. I'm putting Statue in C tier. Next up, we have Torch. Torch Twinborn can use their allomantic tin to increase their senses, and they can use their ferrochemical brass to store warmth. Okay, I don't necessarily think this is a great combo, but I could see it being useful if the Torch is acting as a scout. They would be fine with going out in pretty much any type of weather, thanks to their ferrochemical brass mine. This is going in B tier. Next up, we have Sapper. Sappers can use their allomantic chromium to wipe the allomantic reserves of a target, and they can use their ferrochemical nigrosyl to store investiture. The name Sapper comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have an interesting reputation. Their reputation is that they steal and hoard the powers of others. Ooh, that's pretty interesting. I don't think it would actually work that way. Let's explain these powers. An allomancer can physically touch another allomancer and burn chromium. If that other allomancer has any allomantic reserves within themselves, those reserves will vanish, and the person that's being leached will feel a coldness rush over them. And ferrochemical nigrosyl, we don't really know that much about it yet. The reputation would imply that the reserves that the sapper is leeching from their target could then be stored in their nigrosyl mine. I think that would would be really, really cool. And I would have to put this up in S tier for sure if that were the case. But we don't have any actual evidence within the books that imply that's possible. For Nigrosel Ferrochemy, we can go off of the Lost Metal Ars Arcanum, which says Soulbearer Pharynx can store investiture in a Nigrosel mind. This is a power that very few know anything about. Indeed, I'm certain the people of Terrace don't truly know what they are doing when they use these powers. So by the time of Era 2, we haven't really seen what Ferrochemical Nigrosel can do. We know that it is used in the medallions, and it seems like it just stores the ability to use investiture, rather than storing the investiture itself. But we do have this paraphrased WOB where Brandon is asked, could Ferrochemical Nigrosel be used to store other invested abilities such as Returned Breath or the abilities of the Knights Radiant? And Brandon said, yes, that's possible. But remember, since this is paraphrased, this might not even be the correct wording as this conversation played out. I don't think that Ferrochemical Nigrosel would be very good on its own. I'm going to put this in the top of C tier. And I just realized I forgot to add the busted tier. Let's fix that. There we go. Next up, we have Blindside. Blindsides can use their allomantic copper to hide allomantic pulses, and they can use their ferrochemical pewter to store physical strength. So an allomancer burning allomantic copper basically throws up what's known as a copper cloud around themselves. So any allomancer within that copper cloud can burn allomantic metals, and it will hide those allomantic pulses from other allomancers that can burn bronze. But burning allomantic copper also protects the allomancer themselves from emotional allomancy. I think that a Blindside would be a great person to have on a team of allomancers, because anytime your team is in a combat situation, they could be putting up that copper cloud to hide the allomantic pulses of the whole team, and they could tap their physical strength in their pewter mind and act as the muscle of the group. Blindside's gonna go in A tier for me. Then we have Scorpions. Scorpions can use their allomantic duralumin to enhance the current metal being burned within themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical cadmium to store breath. Now, an allomancer that can only burn duralumin can't really use their duralumin to do anything because they can't burn any other metals. So this is a Nat of the Twinborn world, and it's going straight to D tier. Then we get to Pulsewise. Pulsewise can use their allomantic bronze to hear allomantic pulses, and they can use their ferrochemical zinc to store mental speed. The name Pulsewise comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and their reputation is that mistings find them impossible to trick. They probably would be really hard to trick. If an allomancer gets very good with their allomantic bronze, they can burn that bronze and not just sense pulses coming from other allomancers when they're burning their metals, but they can pick up on the subtleties of those pulses and determine what metal's being burned. And we've even seen Vin use bronze enhanced by duralumin to be able to tell what emotions Breeze was targeting when he was burning his brass. So in her case, she was able to do that because she was powering it up with duralumin and just using that whole bronze reserve at once. But I think if a Pulsewise had enough mental speed stored up and they tapped that zinc while they're burning their bronze, that increased mental speed should help them pick up on these little nuances between the pulses. So I think a Pulsewise could get extremely good at understanding what the different allomantic pulses mean. I could see a Pulsewise being a scientist or an arcanist. They would be a good world hopper, making their way throughout the Cosmere, learning about the different types of magic on various planets. Because allomantic bronze can pick up on pulses made from investiture use in general, not just allomancy. I'm gonna put this in S tier. Next up, we have Forecast. Forecasts can use their allomantic electrum to reveal their future, and they can use their ferrochemical tin to store senses. Okay, so yes, electrum does reveal your future in the form of electrum shadows, but it only reveals the immediate future. So it shows different paths that you could be taking in like the next 5 seconds of your future, basically. It isn't really that useful. And then ferrochemical tin, of course, you can store each sense in its own tin mind. It has an advantage somewhat over allomantic tin in the fact that you don't have to increase all your senses at once. I wonder if when you're burning allomantic electrum and you're able to see these electrum shadows, if that would be counted as a sense. your sense to see electrum shadows. So maybe a forecast could burn their electrum and store whatever that sense is in a tin mind, and then they just wouldn't see their electrum shadows while they're actively storing. And then maybe they could store up a bunch of whatever that sense is, and then at a later time burn their electrum again, but this time tap that sense and perhaps see further into the future with these electrum shadows. I don't know. That's a lot of speculation, but food for thought. Forecast has to go in C tier for me. And you know what? I just thought Sapper deserves B tier. Next up, we have Brute Blood. Brute Bloods can use their allomantic pewter to increase their physical strength, and they can use their ferrochemical gold to store health. The name Brute Blood comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of never being counted out of a fight. I think this is a really, really good combination. So allomantic pewter does increase physical strength when you're burning it, but it also increases your balance, your dexterity, your agility, and your health, your healing factor. It goes up. You can heal quicker, and you're tougher. So on its own, pewter already helps you heal. Couple that with ferrochemical gold, and you can heal rapidly. Also, you could be burning your allomantic pewter and it should be increasing your health already. So then you should be able to store that extra health in your ferrochemical gold mine and just go back to your base level of health. In theory, you should be able to store health without any of the negative side effects. And yeah, a Brute Blood in a fight would be crazy. I could see a Brute Blood going up against like 10 enemies who have weapons, and the Brute Blood is just weaponless, and they're just taking all the hits and shrugging it off and healing instantly. Their increased physical strength thanks to their pewter would make them hit extremely hard. This is a really, really good combo. My biggest gripe with ferrochemical gold is that it would be so terrible to store it up because it makes you sick. But this combination basically eliminates that. You can just store your extra health that you're getting from your pewter. This is going in busted for me. Next up, we have Whisper. Whispers can use their allomantic gold to reveal their past self, and they can use their ferrochemical cadmium to store breath. This is not a very good combination. So allomantic gold is one of the least useful allomantic metals. When you burn your gold, you see a gold shadow, and it is a version of yourself if you had made different decisions in your past. So far in the books, we haven't seen any good use for this. I know there's some theories that maybe you could glean some information off of this gold shadow, like the gold shadow might be more specialized in one area than you are. One of the quirks of gold is when you're seeing your gold shadow, you are seeing through both sets of eyes, your own eyes and the gold shadow's eyes, and thinking with both minds. So it's described as a very strange experience. And then ferrochemical cadmium, storing breath, basically storing oxygen, is not that great, at least until the space era of the Cosmere. So Whisper is going C tier for me. Next up, we have Gulper. Gulpers can use their allomantic chromium to wipe the allomantic reserves of a target, and they can use their ferrochemical bendalloy to store energy. The name Gulper comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of consuming physical and magical energy. Okay, interesting. So the form of energy that you can store in a bendalloy mine is calories or water, pretty much, or other liquids, I guess. So they could store up a huge reserve of food or water, and then they could tap that at a later time and go for a long time without actually needing to go through the process of eating or drinking. I don't think that these two abilities build on each other in any way. This is just gonna go in B tier for me. Next up, we have Flashback. Flashbacks can use their allomantic gold to reveal their past self, and they can use their ferrochemical steel to store physical speed. Ferrochemical steel is usually regarded as one of the better ferrochemical abilities. Sazed in Era 1 says that it's one of the most difficult attributes to store up, physical speed, because when you're actively storing, you're gonna feel like you're moving through molasses. That's how he describes it. And even your breathing becomes labored. But then when you're tapping that physical speed at a later time, you can move rapidly. In Era 2, we see Bleeder use this, and she's moving so rapidly that she looks like a blur. And the only way that Wax and Wayne are able to track and see what she's doing is by being inside of one of Wayne's speed bubbles. I don't think that ferrochemical steel and allomantic gold are a good combination though, so I'm gonna put this in C tier. Next up, we have Stalwart. Stalwarts can use their allomantic iron to pull metals, and they can use their ferrochemical gold to store health. The name Stalwart comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, And they have the reputation of being able to take unheard of levels of punishment. All right, so I think that this is a pretty decent combination. Allomantic iron is pretty useful. You can use it to pull yourself up onto high places that have metal. Anything that's anchored down and heavier than you can pull yourself up towards. You can also use it to pull weapons out of people's hands, like swords or guns that aren't made of aluminum. One of the drawbacks of iron is that you're pulling metal directly towards you, so you could hurt yourself potentially if you pull it too fast and don't get out of the way. But that can be mitigated with your ferrochemical gold. As long as you have enough of your health stored up, even if you do hurt yourself by pulling some metal object into your body, then you could just tap your health and heal from that. I'm gonna put Stalwart in A tier. Next up, we have Conspirator. Conspirators can use their allomantic copper to hide allomantic pulses, and they can use their ferrochemical zinc to store mental speed. All right, so Conspirator, they would basically be the type to hide in the shadows, away from prying eyes, and just coming up with harebrained schemes. Yeah, I could see a Conspirator being a great smoker, right? For like a team of allomancers, they could just hang out at the hideout, constantly burning their copper, throwing up that copper cloud. They could be like the mastermind of the team. They could be using their increased mental speed anytime that they're coming up with a complex plan or heist. Oh, actually, they could almost use their ferrochemical zinc as a disguise. They could convince everybody, even their own teammates, that they're just this bumbling fool who kind of stumbles around. People keep him around because he can burn copper and protect their hideout. I never really thought of using ferrochemical zinc as a type of disguise. If a conspirator is doing that and they make people think that they only have allomantic copper and that they're not a Twinborn, I could see that being a very good way to maybe take over a team of allomancers. I don't know. I think this is a pretty good combination though. I'm gonna put this in A tier. Our last Twinborn type for this part is Strongarm. Strongarms can use their allomantic zinc to riot the emotions of others, and they can use their ferrochemical pewter to store physical strength. The name Strongarm comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of winning opponents over one way or the other. All right, this is a pretty cool combination. So yeah, they could either win their opponents over by rioting the right emotions and making them more agreeable with what they're saying. And if that fails, then they could just tap their physical strength, bulk up, and then they could just intimidate their opponent into complying. And emotional allomancy is, in my opinion, one of the best types of allomancy. You can do a lot with it. You don't only have to use it for manipulation. You could be rioting your friends and family and make them feel happier. You could be just increasing all of the feel-good emotions in them. Strongarm is going in S tier for me. All right, so there is my final tier ranking for part 11. Let me know in the comments if you would rank these Twinborn types any differently. And here's a quick view of the combined tier list for parts 1 through 11. We have 5 more parts to go, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when the next part drops. Become a patron or a channel member at the Arcanist tier or higher to get access to high quality versions of these Twinborn cards. You can also get an audiobook of your choice absolutely free thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Audible. All you have to do is use the link in the description below and sign up for an Audible Premium Plus 30-day free trial. Then you'll get an Audible credit. You can use that credit to get any audiobook of your choice. This membership also gives you access to thousands of other audiobooks and podcasts in the Audible Plus catalog. This is a really good opportunity to try out Audible, no strings attached. You get a free audiobook, and if you don't like the service, you can cancel your membership and you still get to keep the audiobook. So get your free audiobook today by using the link in the description below. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you in part 12.